Hey everybody, welcome to the first of our fantasy football series. We're going to get you ready for draft day, and we're going to give you some ideas and theories that we've got kicking around. I'm David Comer.
I'm Dave Herndon.
And Dave, let's get into it. Football's in the air. We're talking NFL. Preseason's on the tube.
I know you've already had your first fantasy draft.
Yeah, I've been in a couple.
My first draft is coming up in just a couple days here. So it's almost like you can smell it in the air. But, the fantasy air, if you will.
Yes, and that would be a fantasy smell as well. So, one of the first things we were going to tackle is just looking at the first round. A lot of teams, what we're basically looking at is more like a 10 to 12 team league. If you play in a bigger one, you're a better person than me. But I think generally about 80% of most players will be looking at 10 or 12 teams in their league.
Yeah, and personally, I prefer the smaller leagues, the 8 to 12 team leagues, just because you know all the other owners. Right. You can really get the trash talk going.
Well, maybe you've got a lot of friends and you've got a 12-teamer. But in any event...
8 to 12 teams. I don't like the ones that go like the 16 or 20 team leagues.
Right. Well, one of the things we're going to talk about is basically what the best situation would be in the first round, what the options would be. Basically, when it comes to the first pick overall, I got to say my own opinion would be Aaron Rodgers.
Taking the carpet right out from under me. I was going to throw it out there that it's non-traditional. You normally almost always go with a running back, but how can you not take Aaron Rodgers with those numbers?
Right. The Packers are only going to continue this assault.
They're only going to get better, and then you look at the teams he's going to play against multiple times, even like my own beloved Lions. Their secondaries have gotten worse since last year.
Amen. Exactly. I think in the past, especially last year, you're looking at like Arian Foster, those kind of guys, but which moves me into what I call the holy trinity of running backs. Once you get past Aaron Rodgers, I say that you've got the top 3 running backs of basically pick your order, but Ray Rice, Arian Foster, LaShawn McCoy. I think without a doubt those are the next 3. The fourth guy down that list, well, technically fifth, would be Maurice Jones-Drew, but with the holdout on top of that, the Jaguars are kind of garbage. MJD, I think, is definitely first-round caliber, but it's just where you slot him. I think this is a little too high for him. That's probably my top 4. How about you?
Again, I'm going to go running backs, just like you did for my next 3 picks. Same 3 guys, but I think Arian Foster is just slightly above those other 2. And really, it's pick your poison. You can't go wrong with any of them. As long as they don't get hurt, they're all 3 like 1A, B, and C for running back.
True that, but at this point, you really do have to split hairs a little bit, and that's where I give Ray Rice maybe a slight edge over the other 2, just because he is the focal point of that offense. He finally started crossing the stripe last year, and with his touchdown total, where that had been he'd been more of just a general yardage guy before then. I like him just a little bit better, just because I think his team is probably a little bit better than the other 2. With Foster, you've got Ben Tate behind him. Also, they're going to be passing a little more with a healthy Matt Schaub and a healthy Andre Johnson, which will be a difference. It'll be a difference maker for them.
Well,
the Eagles.
I don't disagree with
you.
You
Can't say Vic will have as bad a year this year with the Eagles, which I think would take a little bit of the load off McCoy.
I don't disagree with you, but Houston, they were the number 1 rushing team last year in terms of attempts. Mm-hmm. Foster's going to get the lion's share of those, even if you cut back 5-10% on attempts. You figure he was one of the top guys last year. He only played 13 games. Mm-hmm. So there's only upside there. You assume he plays healthy, you get those extra couple games out of him, and just look at the numbers, what they could have been.
Right.
But that's me, and then I agree with you. Ray Rice, LaShawn McCoy, right there. Personally, I have Maurice Jones-Drew not in my top 10 overall.
Mm-hmm. Is that the holdout?
It's the holdout. It's the Jaguars. I've never been big on the guy, mm-hmm. even when people were going nuts over him.
Well, I had a reason to last year. Rushing champ, double-digit touchdowns, despite having a knee injury people were worried about in preseason.
But going to close out my top 5, I really think Chris Johnson's going to make a big bounce back.
So do you like him in that 6 to 10 range?
Well, like I said, to close out my top 5, if I was going 1 through 5 in the draft, I'd definitely take him 5th.
Okay, 5th.
He's 4th running back off the board, but
right.
he'd be my 5th overall pick. Moving on from there, going into 6th, I finally got to take a wide receiver, and number 1 receiver off the board, it's got to be Calvin Johnson.
Agreed.
Mad numbers, and his quarterback's only getting better, and was already one of the top quarterbacks last year. in terms of yardage and touchdowns.
Sure.
And they're only going to get better. They're developing a relationship. And what was it, 5 games last year where Calvin Johnson had multiple TDs?
Are they going steady, developing a relationship? But yeah, I agree. And what Stafford did hit that kind of wall middle of the year.
Oh, that was the thumb injury and whatnot.
Look at what Johnson did even 2 years prior when you had the gaggle of bad quarterbacks.
You throw into him basically.
Orlovsky, Stafford, Stanton. Right.
But so Calvin Johnson's definitely my 6th pick. I don't know where you went, but
right. Well, basically after my 4, around number 5. I kind of lean towards Tom Brady. I really think Brady and Breeze, I think, are surefire first rounders. Basically, it's where you want to take them. Tom Brady, I see the Patriots once again. There's no real dominant rusher. You look at the year he had last year with the 5,000 yards, touchdowns, plus the fact Josh McDaniels is coming back to run the offense, which he had with him when he threw for 50 touchdowns a few years ago. I think that. I really like Brady in that spot. After Brady, I kind of that gets a little shaky. Obviously, if Jones-Drew, if all things were equal with his contract status, I might go that way. But again, Calvin Johnson, surefire number 1 receiver, and probably in kind of a class of his own when it comes to the receivers. Following him, that's when I start looking at Drew Brees, and I think Chris Johnson kind of comes in around 7 or 8.
Okay.
For me.
You want to round out your 6 through 10, and then I'll give you mine?
Sure. Basically, I think Maurice Jones-Drew has to be in the conversation towards the end of that first round. I really like him. I also think that there's been some hatred, but I think you have to look at a lot of people are questioning Cam Newton and Matthew Stafford on a national level. I like both of them towards the end of the round. I think you can do a lot worse. I have no problem with those 2 guys. And unfortunately, one guy I did have slotted for the tail end of that first round, which was Ryan Matthews. Broken collarbone, I think you can't go with him any higher than maybe the late 4th round, early 5th round now. But yeah, basically I'm looking at those top 5 quarterbacks are really in a class by themselves. Obviously, you're looking at Rodgers, Brees, and Brady kind of in their own orbit. Newton, it's a little chancy to risk those rushing touchdowns, but
so you're going to think I'm crazy here, but I do have 4 quarterbacks in my first round.
Yeah, that's not crazy at all.
Similar to you, but where you're going to think I'm crazy is I've got Cam Newton, the number 2 QB, off the board. I think do I want him on my team? Not necessarily. If I'm an NFL fan, because you don't know exactly what you're going to get out of him. But from a fantasy standpoint, he puts up a lot of yards. Passing, I'm expecting him anywhere from 20 to 25 passing touchdowns this year. You throw in another 10 rushing touchdowns, you're getting anywhere between 500 and 900 rushing yards out of him. I honestly don't. As an overall fantasy player in terms of output, I can't see not taking him in your top 10. So I've got him coming, 2nd QB off the board. That's my number 6 guy. Other than that, right in that area, then I'm taking 2 more QBs. Like you mentioned, Drew Brees, Tom Brady. Both of them over 5,000 yards last year. They both broke the old passing record.
Right.
But they're also not on the fun side of 30 anymore. Either one of them. Tom Brady, although he did come back great off that knee injury. He does still linger. What's going to happen if he takes one more big hit? I know it's been a couple years, but he's getting older. And I love the guy, especially as a U of M fan. I love the guy. I hope he plays another 30 years. But I think his fantasy stock is just dropping a little bit.
I don't see how. But especially Gronkowski going into his 3rd year at tight end. You add a Brandon Lloyd.
But can you really hope?
Add a Jabbar Gaffney. You've already got Welker.
But can you hope he's going to match another 5,200 yards and 40 touchdowns?
I don't think you can honestly guess that any of these top quarterbacks will match what they did last year. The whole point of this is just trying to get, trying to take the guesswork out of it as much as possible. And when it comes to sure things, I think you can't doubt his productivity.
And then, to round out my first round, I got to take a trio of receivers. And, right there at the tail end of the first round, you got Larry Fitzgerald, Wes Welker, Welker, while he doesn't put up a lot of touchdowns, puts up a ton of yards. And if you happen to be in a league where you get credit for catches,
Points per reception.
he's gold.
Mm-hmm.
And then Roddy White, who I expect to have a really good year. And I know he's been up and down, he's been injured, he's been healthy. But if he stays healthy, I don't think anybody can touch him in that bottom end of the top 5 wide receiver range.
Interesting. To me, I don't see touching any other receivers until the beginning of the second round. To me, if you're in maybe a slightly larger league where you've got those 12 first-round picks, towards the bottom end of that round, I'd be looking seriously at a Matt Forte, just with the yardage totals he's going to put up. I'd be looking at possibly, like I said, even with Stafford and Newton, I see those guys towards the end. I also see, again, Maurice Jones-Drew you have to look at. Maybe at the end of that first round, you even start considering a Marshawn Lynch, but don't do it too hard. He does have that legal issue. But to me, I don't see those receivers. I think every receiver has some question marks, but even the elite ones, I'd say you don't go to them until the second round. Just you're dealing with Larry Fitzgerald's quarterback situation. You're dealing with Roddy White getting cannibalized by Julio Jones, who's only going to get better in his second half of in his second year. Especially when you look at how he closed last year with a bang, basically outproducing Roddy White down the stretch. Andre Johnson, you have the injury issues, and I love him to death, but he hasn't stayed healthy for at least 2 or 3 years. And if anything, Greg Jennings, Jordy Nelson came on strong. There's a lot of, and then Welker, obviously I love the guy, but you have to wonder if Brandon Lloyd is going to take some of that production away from him. You've got Aaron Hernandez, who's going to get a bigger part of the action.
Chad Ochocinco didn't.
True, but one difference though, I think Brandon Lloyd isn't certifiable. So again, a lot of those guys, and if anything, in that early second round, late first round area, I might be looking at a Jimmy Graham or a Rob Gronkowski before I would look at any other receiver, just because I see those guys as putting up receiver-like numbers, but basically in untowards manners, just because they're in offenses that are like pinballs.
Well, see, it's just a difference in our draft strategies there. I tend to roll the dice a little more. I'd rather have the top 2 or 3 receivers all on my team, because I honestly think once you get down running backs from like 6 to 20 are basically...
There's a lot of question marks, and there's a lot of committees you have to worry about.
You're getting a lot of similar numbers out of your backs once you get the top 4 or 5 off the board.
Potentially, yes.
With wide receivers, there's 3 or 4 that are going to outperform the rest, barring injury.
True.
And I'd rather reach early and get them all and not leave other people the options.
My one thing about receivers, though, this year, it's a very deep position, and especially if you're in a league that considers tight ends receivers, it becomes even deeper. But I just think you can wait to get a good receiver a little later than normal, just because, again, the sheer quantity of them this year. According to me, I know a lot of things can change, but right now I just see it as really being a deep position.
I see the middling being deep. Like, again, once you get out of those top 3 or 4 receivers, it's extremely deep with the second tier.
Right.
The guys that are going to get you, 700 to 900 yards and 8 scores. But those top guys are going to get you the 12 to 1500 yards and 15 scores. And I want those guys all on my team.
Well, that's debatable. And let us know what you guys think. Be sure to share comments with us on our Facebook page or on the News Herald site itself. And we'll be seeing you real soon for more fantasy football talk.